With the lighting of this torch, I hereby declare the Mind Sport Olympiad open, or at least our podcast episode for today, because actually it's over and we're ready to talk about our performances in this wonderful event. I'm East Coast Samuel on PokerStars.
I'm Legend number one on PokerStars. And yes, so typically we talk about some sort of poker media and then maybe secondarily refer to the MSO. But this time we're mixing things up. We're going more the Mike Matusow route. Our main topic here really is just our run in the 2025 Mind Sport Olympiad poker division this year. I think we briefly talked about the first event last time. There was a total of 7 events in this series, so we'll be discussing the last 6 events. We've discussed in the past, Sam has a illustrious medal career in the MSO. He had his legendary run in 2022, where he took in 5 bronze medals in different events and finished in third place overall, losing the tiebreaker narrowly due to despite having the same number of points and really, if you ask me, deserve the silver. And I've not quite made it into the medal rounds of things. I've had 4 medal bubbles, finishing fifth twice in heads-up events and finishing fourth twice. So this season I was really hoping to get that one final breakthrough to really kind of get on the scoreboard here and not let it be so lopsided with me and Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I'd been playing the Mind Sport Olympiad since 2020. I was reading the Boston Globe one day and I saw a little blurb for it. And this was during 2020, during the pandemic. And I'd also just graduated from college, so I had all this free time. So I said, oh, sure, I'll go and check that out. And Ben didn't participate that year, but I did. I got fifth place overall in the poker events, and then I got a bronze medal in creative thinking, which was really strange because like I just played that event just apropos of nothing. And then, as Ben mentioned, I got third place in 2022 on the single biggest heater I ever won on in my entire life. This was not skill. This was really just luck, me catching the right cards. I'm telling you, during a stud hand, I had aces full of kings on Fifth Street, and the guy was raising me. So I managed to double up in that hand. He just punted off his stack at that moment. I was fifth place in the standings going into the very last event, which was Omaha High Low, no limit Omaha High Low. And I actually couldn't play the full event because I had a party to go to. So I
Remember that
played the
story.
first hour or so, and then I hit sit out. And I'm expecting, okay, maybe I make the final table. I had a big stack by the time I sat up. But when I opened my laptop, I discovered I'd actually gotten third place and then third place overall. So again, total heater, not reflective of my skill level. And then in 2023 and 2024, I got a medal, silver medal in 2023 in Hold'em, and then 2024, I got a bronze medal in Heads Up Hold'em. So, going into this MSO, I was thinking, again, 2022 is a heater. I did okay in the last couple of MSOs, obviously getting a medal in each one, but I didn't really have any high expectations for myself. I was just going to try my best. And I did try my best, and we'll obviously go through the results.
Yeah, this was really kind of my third year playing in the majority of the events. I think I played in one or two events in 2022, but really 23 and 24 were my first, big two shakes at it. And last year was pretty horrible. I mean, outside of that one fourth place finish in Raz, it was really pretty awful. But there were also more events that year. This year, really, with only 7 events, each one really kind of counted. And we'd gotten off to an okay start, not terrible, not great in the first event. You got 18th out of 42 players. I got 12th. So point wise, it's kind of a percentage-based scoring system, your top 5 finishes. And so you basically kind of just take like what percentile you finished or what you outlasted, and that's kind of how many points you got. So you got close to 100 for winning the whole thing. If you made it halfway, you got 50 with a little bit of, maybe decimal differences here and there. And so heading into event number 2 was the Raz event, which again was one of my events I had the most elevated expectations for. It was, it was a fun event. Unfortunately, again, due to work, it affected my ability to play it as fully as I would have liked. But I did get off to a really good start in this event. After level 1, I was at 12,004. I'd won half of the opening 18 hands, and then I kind of went on a dry spell. But again, with Raz, I really have a lot of fun. Depending on your table draw, I usually play pretty aggressively if I have the best hand. I'm not going to slow play things, even if my opponent has out. So, but my table wasn't really too bullyable this time around, so it wasn't as easygoing as say last year would have been. But I still was having fun as that began in that first sort of half hour.
Yeah, same here. I mean, Raz is always a fun game to play, and a lot of people who are used to playing Texas Hold'em or games who are trying to make the best possible hand, it's harder for them to play with the worst possible hand, especially with cards showing. So, I mean, for me, again, I'm a very tight player. I try to play, three cards below an eight, and if it's like 8-7-3, then I'll probably muck and wait for a 7-6 or a 6-5 or something. Um, but yeah, I mean, it seemed like for Raz some people were more familiar with and able to take advantage of spots. Other players didn't seem as familiar with it. I think I even recall at one point somebody asked like how long the tournament would go on for because it was taking a while for him. So yeah, I mean, I was able to find some spots here and there. Wasn't like a super big stack. It wasn't a super short stack for a while. I mean, just kind of hanging in there. Unfortunately, I didn't take notes during these tournaments, so I can't quite remember how exactly my performance was. But I mean, I was just doing okay, trying to find the best spots I could, trying to just kind of stay focused and wait my hands. I mean, the upside to the tight game that I play is I'm fairly patient. I can wait for spots. I can fold 20 hands in a row if need be. I can be the bring in three times in a row, and I'm not going to tilt too much. So yeah, I mean, I was really just trying to pick my spots, pick up pots where I could. If I had, I mentioned 8-7-3 before that, I would fold that. But if everybody had a nine showing, then I know that I'm obviously ahead, so I would raise. And I think people respected my game for the most part. There are later tournaments early on where people did not respect my raises as much, and I'll get into that. But in Raz, they seemed to respect that I had good cards, and so I was able to just pick up some pots here and there.
Yeah, and this event had 30 players in it. And so we actually both managed to squeeze ourselves into the final table, unfortunately with a short stack. But again, given that you're, a pretty tight player on average, and I play a pretty high variance game, just to make it to that spot, in Raz you can go from short stack to chip leader, very quickly if you have the right run of cards. And so unfortunately, Sam, you bow out in eighth place, which again still is a final table.
Yeah.
It's still, again, we always joke about how we have certain milestones. Top half of the field, final two tables, final table, the played chip money bubble, and then the medals, obviously. And so again, we made it to that bare minimum requirement. And again, I was pretty short, so I go out in seventh. But again, it was first of all the start of a pattern where we would go out in consecutive order, ironically, and then also just again seventh place on the heels of a 12th place. Again, kind of that like one quarter of the field ish. So it's still like 70-ish points. It's still a healthy chunk of points for me. And so, as it turns out, as a result of those two finishes, I was actually third in the overall standings in the grand poker scoreboard, and Sam was still in fifth place, despite the fact that he was a few spots behind me in those two events. So. Again, not medal level achievements, but still, competitive and keeping yourself in there, considering that you need to have five good scores, and these were two, good enough scores if your other scores were sufficient as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think my high point was 16K in the Raz event, something like that. So again, like above starting stack, okay. So to make the final table when you don't have, even 20K at any point is very remarkable. And the same with you. I mean, again, you were never a huge stack. That we were both able to, just get in there, even if we busted early at the final table, is still very good.
Yeah, and so that led us to event number three, the Omaha High-Low event, which drew 36 players, so right in the middle of the field size of the first two events. And again, with High-Low, I'm not a bad player at High-Low. I know how to read. I know last year I had that horrible table that was super slow, that played almost like half as many hands as your table did. I wasn't dealt an ace for almost an hour straight. And so I knew that if I had, average to above average cards, I was going to have a fair shake at things. But with this game, I feel like it's also one of the most liable for maybe the inexperience to really make some mistakes, and that was very prevalent early on. There was a player by the name of Kirkyo who was in the early goings at 20,000, I think, within that first hour, and then he managed to find his way out in 34th place in fast order. And I just thought, like, you have 20,000 in Ama high low. No one's been knocked out yet. If you can just play, even just mediocrely, you're gonna make it to the final table if that stack. And I was taken aback by it, but whatever. And as in the early goings, I wasn't really picking up too many chips, but I was. There were a few spots where, when players shove three high card hands, so I bust a player, for example, in 30th place, and he shoved King King 9-5, no suit. And any Omaha high-low experts will know that that's just not a good hand. And with by virtue of that bust out, I got up to 17,000 chips, which for me is a lot considering how in those early levels I'm usually so card dead and just sort of hanging around at 10K. So to get to 17K that early was a big deal. And you were at 14K yourself at that point. And again, with four tables of nine, by that point we're down to 29 players. Again, I was getting some confidence in that tournament at that point.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Kirkia because that was sort of a recurring theme throughout was just a lot of swinginess in terms of the stacks. A lot of big stacks early on, not even making the top half of the field, so really not having a good day at all. And conversely, a lot of really, really short stacks chipping up and in some cases even medaling in some events. So I mean, it was a really swingy MSO, except for me, really, where I was just sort of like, I mean, as you mentioned, I was above, about 14K at one point. But again, I don't really remember like winning any huge pots. I would often win half a pot or maybe three-quarters of a pot, but I would rarely, if ever, scoop an entire pot. And if I did, it's kind of like a raise and take situation. Yeah, I mean, here I don't have any, super, super big memories of these games. When I'm playing poker, I mean, I'm pretty focused. It's on to the next spot. I'm usually not sort of registering big wins or big losses or anything. Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me to again to play Omaha high low because of my tightness. King King 8-3. Well, the 8-3 is not great. I mean, I'm not going to win the whole pot if the low hits. Um, it's tough for me to negotiate those spots. But yeah, I mean, I remember just winning a few pots, raise and takes it here and there, some three-quarter pots every now and again, but nothing like a huge big scoop.
Well, but then by the end of hour one, on the heels of me busting the player, I was up to 18.1 thousand. And Sam, he was at 26.3 thousand. We were
Yeah.
in the top four in chips after 1 hour. And so I was getting really excited. And then in the middle of hour two, I accidentally scooped this like 7K pot with bottom pair, no kicker. And I was just laughing to myself, like, how did I win this hand? But I guess, it was just kind of one of those funny accidents. Unfortunately, hour two didn't quite go as well for us. Sam was down to 16K and I was at 13.5K, which still put us in the middle of the pack with 17 players left. But again, with about less than half the field, I was starting to get a little worried because I like, having that cushion because I really make so few mistakes. But then, if I get unlucky in one big hand, then that kind of ruins that run. And overall, I was really happy with my play in these tournaments. I would say half of my bust outs were on my very first all-in for the tournament, and then just getting unlucky. Luckily, within the first hour, I mean, sorry, the first hand of hour three of the high-low event, there were three bust outs. So we went from 17 players down to 14. And at that point, okay, I'm relaxing a little bit more because we're earning, almost like 3 points a knockout by this point, and this is just, it's helping me because I'm in third place overall, and so it's like I want to maintain a solid point total, and that was definitely flowing, even if I wasn't really chipping up.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mentioned when I said I got, three-quarter pot royals. That's what got me to the 26K was, winning like a three-quarter of a pot once or twice. But yeah, I mean, Omaha, after that point, that was, the highlight of really my whole MSO was getting to 26K. Then like, okay, I'm in a good position. And yeah, just winning pots here and there. I also just would, call with a tempting hand, maybe a suited ace, ace five of clubs or something with two other cards, hoping that I could hit a low and then I would just miss the low. That happened a lot during the stud tournament, which we'll obviously get to later, but that happened quite a bit in Omaha High Low as well. So, I mean, I definitely need to improve how I combine high and low hands. If I'm proceeding forward in a hand, what exactly is my gameplay? I don't have to have everything nailed down, but I need to do a better job of that. And Omaha exposed that a little bit, but it was really 8 game mix and seven card stud that really exposed that for me. So I mean that's something I'm trying to take away from this MSO.
And then, so in the middle of hour three, I was chipping down a bit. I was down about 8K, and then I doubled up back to back through the same player, which was pretty sick. And then with 12 players left, I was in second place with 42,000. So again, that's one of the biggest stacks I've had in any MSO event ever, really. I mean, I've had that in other events before, but not very often.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the pace of bust out just always slows down after a certain point when the chip stacks get to a big enough. And Sam unfortunately bows out in 10th place, and so I make the final table, back-to-back final tables for me. Unfortunately, I'm in seventh overall out of nine, and there's a couple of I think there are three like huge chip stacks, and the rest of us are all kind of clustered together, and so. I'm going for a medal, obviously. I want to have a chance here, and so I took kind of maybe it was a little bit of a rush here, but I went all in with a double suited, ace three, five, four hand or something like that. And I got called, and then I got scooped. So I unfortunately busted ninth place, and I guess I could have just like folded that hand and trudged on and maybe made to like eighth or seventh place. But I was trying to get a medal at that point, and so in hindsight, maybe that was a mistake, but. Ninth place is still not bad. And as a result of that ninth place finish, I was still maintaining in the top, I think top three in the overall standings. I think no, I'm sorry, I was second. I was second overall, only 26 points behind first place. So again, almost halfway into the series, but keeping me again up in there, which then leads us to what was arguably my worst game of the roster here. Maybe it's second worst now, maybe now in hindsight, but I think my worst game beforehand, deuce to seven triple draw, and so this was a 33 player event. And again, it's limits. I should mention though, the high-low event was no limit, and a lot of players were like, "It's usually pot limit. What is this?" And so it did lead to some of those really crazy swings because players were going all in, and usually when they just pot it. So that was maybe responsible for some of those bust outs. But triple draw. I consulted my old reliable copy of SuperSystem before this event, and I really stuck to two rules from the book. I went to that section, and it worked out really well. A two-card draw hand must have a two in it, which makes sense, but it's good to kind of have it in paper. And the second rule was a real quality drawing hand must have a two or three in it with no chance of a trade or flush, which is common sense, but just kind of good to have it in your mind. So my plan was stick to those two rules and see what happens. And last year, again, I didn't play very well. I was out relatively early. This year, I thought, oh, let's just, this is probably going to be one of my two events that I drop seven events, five top scores. So two events you're not going to use. So I thought this is probably going to be one of those two events for me. So let's just, do our best here and try not to embarrass ourselves. And as it turns out, Sam and I were at the same table in this event for almost the entire event. I think there were only two hands that we were apart before a table merge happened. So we were at the same table. So, Sam's, probably as tight as me in this game, because I'm pretty tight in this game, and especially following those two rules. And so I got off to a pretty good start. I did late reg actually for this event because I was like, let's just minimize how often I'm playing this game that I'm not very well versed in. And so by the end of the first hour, I was at 10,005. So, so I was okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, we both talked about this game a lot. I mean, there was about a 4 day period between Omaha High Low and this tournament. We are both like, yeah, this is not going to be our day this Monday. I like Deuce through seven. I think it's a fun game. I like the triple draw aspect of it, that you have multiple opportunities to make your hand. On the other hand, for a tight player like myself, there's a bit of a disadvantage in that I want to make my hands early and get multiple rounds of betting out of it versus deuce through seven. You really have to make your hands late. You have, triple draw, right? You have three opportunities to draw your cards, which again, for somebody who's very cautious like me, well, there's the advantage that I have three opportunities to make my draw. But on the other hand, if I have an 8-6 low, right, or like a 9 low, right? Let's just say a 9 low. That's an okay hand, and okay, I can lead out with it. But somebody can keep drawing to get, an 8-6 low or an 8-5 low even and beat me. I'm never going to be confident with a 9. So you really have to switch gears and be careful with how you make hands in this. So yeah, and again, the limit aspect of it means you're not going to have huge pots if you take it down, before there is any draws or after one draw. So anyway, I mean, I really did not have high expectations for this. And again, I'm a very tight player. So, I mean, I took Ben's rules and kind of added my own variation, four cards. I have to have four good cards in order to proceed in a hand. And yeah, I mean, Nothing huge. It was kind of like Omaha high-low, where like I didn't have any huge pots. I was able to chip up a little bit, chip down a little bit, kind of hug the 10K starting stack for the most part. Just not quite making the hands I wanted. Again, getting into a lot of sort of close spots where it's like, okay, I have like a 9-6 low. I have, like an 8-7-5 low. What exactly do I do here? Nothing optimal. I never had a 7-5. I don't even think I had an 8 perfect. So it was really hard for me to catch hands here.
Yeah, and so there are really kind of two threads that kept me alive in this tournament. One was winning lots of small pots, I say by accident, where, I had some pretty awful hand that like didn't improve on the third draw. Like I would have like a 10 low, I'd on the last draw, pitch it, get back a king or a queen, and it would win. Like they'd pair up on their last draw and I would just win, pots that way. And a few times was knowing when to just stand pat, where if I was heads up and I knew that they were going to draw, I would stand pat with like a 9 low, a 10 low, and they would, get a king or a pair, and I would just win those pots. And I would know when to stop and go, and then also when to pick off those bluffs when they would eventually go for the bet on the last street of betting. So again, I was again incorporating those rules I had and just making reads in the moment. And I would say, of those spots where I would say maybe like 15 out of 18 spots I won in those situations. And so that's obviously a lot of chips coming my way. And so even though I'm not being very aggressive and I was a middling stack for pretty much the majority of this event until maybe the very end, I was holding my own better than I ever would have thought. And I was steadily chipping up by the end of hour two. You were at 9K, I was at 15.5K, and then I got up to 21K, 27K. I'm steadily rising. I'm feeling good. Sam bows out in ninth place, just getting beat on the last draw by like one card value. And I was like, if he had won that hand, that he, could even make the final table if he had held on there. By the end of hour three, I'm at about 30K, and then it's a six-handed event, so. I have 40K with seven left, and again, I'm following my rules, and I'm honestly astonished that these rules are working. Like, I guess if I had, had this mentality last year, maybe things would be different. And then, unfortunately, there's this sort of this people go all in, they don't bust, and so I'm chipping down a little bit from the blinds as we hit the final table. So now there's six left. I'm fourth in chips with six left at this point. At the end of hour four, there's now five left, and I'm in third place with 26K. Someone goes out, there's now four left. I'm really getting excited. I'm in third place out of four, and then unfortunately, 400 play is just a disaster. I lose every hand I play, just getting awful draws, getting bad spots, and then I end up unfortunately busting in fourth place with an 87, bust to an 86, and so I was really let down at first, and then then a few minutes later, I was like, it's my worst game. I got fourth place. It is my fourth bubble of the medals, but I played my heart out, and it was like about, almost about like 4 hours, 15, 4 hours, 20 minutes of playing some just mistake-free, the best, from the confines of how I was going to approach this game. I played mistake-free for the most part and just did, pretty great job. So I was happy, even though it was a bit of a letdown because it allowed me to again accumulate a lot of points, and I was now in third place overall in the standings, so less than a point behind the guy in second place with three events to go.
Yeah, can we also just say Ben and I were at the same table. We did not share cards. We did not collude or anything. Obviously, I was excited for Ben to make the final table and get fourth place, and I was disappointed that he didn't quite get there, but there was no collusion or cheating or anything involved. So I just wanted to say that.
Absolutely. And again, with that hand in the books, that led us to the fifth event, an event that I was again pretty excited about, Showtime Hold'em. This was a 28 player event with the rules that I had missed this event last year because of work, and so I was really excited to get into this and have some fun. And I was actually the level one chip leader early with 12.5K, which is always exciting. And again, with this game, it really comes down to knowing the math and knowing when your pairs and flush draws are live, how that adjusts your game. If I have two sixes and I'm seeing king five and queen two folded, I'm going to play my sixes a little bit more aggressive than had I hadn't seen those cards yet. And again, position is so important because late in position you know more, but then it also makes your raises seem more strong if you're raising in early position.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited for this one. I always love playing Hold'em, of course, and Showtime, having cards exposed helps me as a tight player because then I can, if I have King Queen offsuit, for example, maybe I would play that, but then I see that two kings have been folded, then I know that my King Queen isn't good and I can fold. But I definitely feel like with this tournament when I played it, I read way too much into that. There were some spots that I think I missed. I got concerned like, okay, I have King Queen, but someone folded a 10, so that means that I can't make a straight now. Um, just too many spots that I think I just missed there. I still did okay, but I definitely had, monsters under the bed syndrome. Probably out of all of the tournaments I played, like this is the one that I'm kind of the most disappointed in terms of my performance. Yeah, I mean they're also just like I just didn't catch a lot of premium hands for sure. But yeah, I just read way too much into having my outs folded. Again, as the example I gave of King Queen, and having two kings folded. Okay, that's okay, but like straight and flush cards, all right, it's nice to know that one or two of your outs is gone, but it doesn't mean that you should just fold your hand. You still have a decent enough hand. So I definitely need to get better at being a little bit more assertive with my play in
But
situations.
but that first hour really was quite successful for both of
Yeah.
us. Um, Sam, you were at almost 12,000 chips at hours one end, and I was at almost 16,000. And again, with the blinds, pretty small, that's still a pretty sizable chunk to earn. And then I won three hands in a row in hour two to get to about 20,000 chips. So I was really, really cruising. And then, unfortunately, that last hour, hour and a half, I was just so card dead. And again, card dead takes two forms in Showtime. One is just your actual hands are bad. And the other one is just that, all your outs are folded. If I have, two threes and both threes are folded, then, it's a really bad hand, And so I was just kind of card dead, folding, folding, folding. At the end of hour two, I was down to 11,000. So again, I'm still above starting stack, but the blinds are getting up there. And Sam, you're down to 4,500. And so that's, it's not great either. And unfortunately, there was about a 30-minute span of 16 handed play. And so that spans multiple levels. And so no one's going out, and I'm chipping down. Sam loses in a flip, unfortunately, and he's out in 16th place. And then I have, a pretty short stack by this point. My first all in. I go all in with ace five suited. None of the aces are folded. I think one five was folded. That's about it, and like none of my clubs. And I got called by two kings, and then I flop a straight draw, and then just brick. But I had such live outs, like none of my outs were dead really, and so it was frustrating because my first all in, you want to win at least. And I'm seeing players go all in and surviving these like Queen six survives against 6-6 and all these ridiculous spots that players can do, and I just can't hold off one when I have probably like 60-40 at worst because of the numbers. So 15th place, it's one spot short of halfway. Not ideal, but it would end up being my worst finish of the whole MSO. And so if you take that, that's not bad, honestly, when you're only having two events that you're not going to use. And so I was happy with that performance. I didn't make any bad plays. I didn't, make any bad calls really. There was one fold where I folded the second nuts, but I was convinced that the guy had the top full house, I had bottom full house. So maybe that spot I could have changed knowing how I would have finished. But otherwise, again, it wasn't terrible. How I played is just a run of bad cards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I played absolutely terrible. It's just I think I missed several spots because again, I was just too scared of straight and flush draws have been folded. So yeah, I mean, definitely moving forward, I need to be a little bit more assertive, not read too much into it. Try to use position better too. As you mentioned, late position in Showtime Hold'em is so huge because you see so many cards folded before you. I mean, it makes late position, 5 times more valuable than it is in standard Texas Hold'em. I guess you could also say that early position, it's like 5 times worse than a normal Texas Hold'em. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just so good to have that information, and I need to be more mindful of that moving forward.
I mean, it's not that early position is bad per se. It's that I mean, you will acquire if you raise, the players are going to fold, and so you'll see their cards, and then
Yeah.
you can adjust it. So maybe you don't play your hand as fast. If you have aces and you see one ace folded, maybe you don't bet as strongly, but you still have a good hand. So as a result of our finishes in this event, I was still third overall in the standings. And Sam was actually fourth overall in the standings. I had a sizable lead against over Sam in that event after that event, but nonetheless, we're both in the sphere of maybe medaling overall, even without having won a medal, which I think is all the more impressive concern that everybody else in that like top 6, 7, 8 had some metal in there at some point, and so it just speaks to our level of consistency that not only are we in there, but we're also as high ranked as we were. That got us to event number 6, 8 game mix, and probably besides Raz and just No Limit Hold'em, but maybe even more than No Limit Hold'em, this is a game that I thought that I definitely had a real shot and a real edge over most of the field, particularly in maybe like 3 or 4 of the games relative to rather than all 8. Like with 8 game mix, you with 5 minute levels, if you're weak in one game, it's not gonna kill you. I mean, I feel like there's enough other hands going on that you can overcome maybe a skill gap. If you play your hands right, and if maybe you use tank fold a little bit. With this event though, it was pretty late, and this speaks to the whole MSO. The MSO was pretty late sometimes in posting these events into the lobby in PokerStars, and so I felt that might have factored into maybe having slightly smaller fields for some of the events. And I think nothing more than this event is the prime example of that because there were only 20 players in this event.
Yeah, it was strange just seeing 20 people. I mean, some of these games are more popular than others. I mean, Juice to Seven Triple Draw isn't super well known. Um, but there's both stud and stud high low. I mean, maybe people just didn't really like that. I'm not really sure what the reasons were for that. But yeah, going into this, I was pretty excited. I love mixed games. As I mentioned, I like Juice to Seven Triple Draw. The stud games are definitely my weakest games. So, my strategy through 8 game is, really try to trip up during the Hold'em variants, really try to trip up during the Omaha variants, and kind of just try to survive stud. And that really was my strategy during the first round of games. Um, winning a couple pots in limit hold'em, winning a couple small pots in Raz, and then just trying to hang on to my stack through stud. I regard that stud as just like, the highway through hell. You really just have to negotiate through because again, as I mentioned, as a tight player, I need to make my hands early so that I can get action and feel comfortable moving forward. So, I mean, I don't like chasing draws. I feel like instead, if I have 4 cards to a flush and then Fifth Street, I don't fill my flush. I feel like my hand's ruined and I can't continue. Um, yeah, I mean, again, just monsters under the bed syndrome during these stud variants. But during that first, little bit of time during 8 game, I felt like I was doing okay, winning pots. My bets were getting some respect. Again, people were just sort of going back and forth in terms of their stacks, especially during no limit hold'em. People were really swinging during the fences during no limit hold'em. It tends to be when the first bust stats happen because everything's limit before then. So yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to survive. I get through the first level. I'm like, okay, everything's okay. We'll just go from there.
Yeah, and one advantage of having of the structure here is that because we have our 5 point totals in the first events, we know exactly what placing we need to get more points. And so I knew that I needed 10th or better with 20 players in this event to improve my score to replace my Showtime Hold'em score. And Sam was, about in that same ballpark, 10th, 11th or so. And so it was actually a pretty slow start for me in this 8 game mix. I got down to 8K pretty early, and then I managed to chip back up a little bit in the last couple of levels to get to 9.2 at the end of hour one. Sam was at 10.7 thousand. So again, combined we're at 20,000. So we're about status quo. And again, with this game, there was really limit hold'em here was really kind of my game. Like if this had just been a limit hold'em event, I think I gold this one because I was crushing every single level. I mean, I wasn't playing every game. I was getting cards, and I was definitely getting players maybe to pay off that one extra bet, even if it was only a small bet on the flop that maybe other players might not have gotten. And so again, that was a big deal because also the limits and the blind structures go up every like 2 levels was when they would sort of be paired. And so it's a steady clip. So every time the game comes around, it's going to be you're playing for more chips each time. And so that was I think Raz not so much early on, but in the later rotations of the game, Raz limit hold'em and another way to hold them are really kind of the 3 games that I probably had the most success in, even which would make sense given my skill set, but also, you could still be the best in the game and have a bet on a card still.
Yeah, I mean, limit hold'em for me was pretty big. I managed to win a couple pots there, and I think I got up to about like 16K or so. For about like 30 minutes, I was like around 16K, going a little bit up, going a little bit down. Things were going pretty well during that second hour. There's like 30 minutes, and Ben was also holding his own. So I was feeling very good about both of our chances. And then my good old friend Stud came around, and I lost a big hand with 2 pair when I had 2 pair on 7th Street and the guy had a straight. And then I like lost another big hand in stud after that. And I mean, in a 10-minute period, I went from 16K to 8K. So I still had chips to play. The blinds were still good enough, but I mean, I went from like, all right, maybe I can make a final table, maybe I can build my stack to, oh my God, I just have to ladder up. Like I'm not gonna be able to get points off of this.
Yeah,
Um,
I ended up busting a super short stack in 18th place, and then level 18, which is limit hold'em in the third rotation of games, was really kind of like the prime peak level for me. I flopped two different sets. I rivered two different straights. This is all in a 5 minute span, and I also Sam had won a few pots that level too. So I was up to 17,000 by the end of hour two, which was just as like the third orbit of the games was finishing up. And again, orbit three was really where things kind of really went up a notch for me because first rotation pretty slow. Second one went better, and then that third one I was chipping up pretty much every level, and that was pretty sick. I ended up busting another player in 12th place. And then Limit Hold'em comes around again. I do great, and then I scooped this huge pot in Ama High Low. Like it was I had like top full house, like kings full of tens. And so obviously there's no chance for a low if the board is like that. And so I crippled Parkour, who was one of the players who was regularly in the top three in this series. And so that actually got me to the chip lead with like 11 or 12 players left, something like that. He had checked the nut flush on the turn, which enabled me to get the full house on the river. And so that's what got me. I think I got like a raise in there on the river, and that was pretty sick. So I'm chipping up great. I'm feeling good. But unfortunately, Sam bows out in 10th place. And again, stud, I mean, but particularly towards the end was probably where I was having the most struggles. So I was maybe, stud high low, I think too, I think is, I feel like there's more on your mind in high low. So I feel like maybe I make less mistakes in stud high because it's a bit easier to tell when your hand is no good. But I would agree that it's probably my weakest two. After having some pretty good success in Deuce Seven, I felt good enough in that game at that point where it wasn't a liability for me like it might have been last year. As Sam bows out in 10th, which is again it's halfway into the field, so he's marginally up. We're just both saying, please don't let me finish in ninth because we've had now a few events where we went out in consecutive order, and that was kind of becoming a trend here. Luckily, I maintain my chip stack. I'm kind of like dropping a bit here. I'm a little bit more carded at this point, but I do reach the final table, which is six players. I'm in third of six left. And then by the end of hour three, there's now five left, but I'm only in fourth. And this is where the stress really ramped up because there were at this point, I want to say three, four, maybe five all-ins at this point, where the two people that are, fighting for the third spot here are surviving. And I had a pretty good lead over fourth and fifth and third place, but they're just not busting out, and I'm like freaking out at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting with you watching you at this point, and I was really stressed too. I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna get fourth place again. Like these guys just they won't effing bust. But yeah, I mean, you were patient, you hung in there. You just waited your spots, you didn't tilt. Um, Also BC 2017 was there, and you two actually started talking quite a bit during
Yeah.
the tournament. Like some of you, if any MSOs are watching, some of you may know Ben likes to chat a little bit. Little bit of things here and there, but BC was actually the first person to respond to you at length. And
Yes.
so shout out to him. Thank you for, talking to Ben during this. He actually
Yes.
started talking about Xenoblade at one point when video
Well,
games were.
his icon for his account is a character from Xenoblade 2, so
Yeah.
or 3, excuse me, Xenoblade 3. Yeah, and so but actually, even though I'm still kind of stressing here, there was this huge scoop pot in Omaha 8 where I accidentally misclicked and bet the river. It was
Yeah.
like a 6,000 chip bet. I didn't mean to bet, and he actually called, and I scooped the whole thing, so I couldn't believe it. I got it to like 51,000, and then there was this big Raz hand where I had this guy crushed on 3 Street and 4 Street, and then on 5th Street I get a king, and then he bets. So I'm behind there, but I had like a king nine low, and he had like queen 10. So I know that if I get any card, then I think maybe he had like 10-9, so I get like an 8, so I'm like well ahead. So I make a call on 5th Street, take it down on 6th Street. So that was I think you might have folded in that spot, but I was just like I still have outs and my hand's in a good spot here. So I win that hand in a Raz, which is huge. It's another big win. And then I actually bust the player out in 5th place, which gets me into second place with four left. But then here we are again on the metal bubble. BC 2017 doubles on the bubble on and do some triple draw by the value of one card on the fifth card. So we're talking like 8-7-5-3 ace versus like 8-7-5-3-2 or something like that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Can we just get this guy out so I win a medal? Fortunately, a different player goes out in fourth place, and I have finally achieved my medal. I am in third with three left, but now we've reached, luckily, the first hand of medal play is no limit hold'em. So my first hand, I got two deuces. I go all in. BC folds 4-3 in the big blind face up. I show the deuces. It would have been a flip, you should have called. I win that hand. And then, unfortunately, a couple of hands later, BC shoves King 10 from the small blind. I have King Jack in the big blind with like 10 big blinds. I, of course, call 10 flop. I do have a gut shot and my Jack is live, but it goes brick brick. So I do lose in third place. I would have been comfortably in second place. BC would have almost had all his chips in all in the middle in that hand. He would have been probably gone in a couple hands after that. So I only in my first all in the whole tournament that I was called for. I think I was all in a few times and no one called me. But my first all in the whole tournament, big favorite. I lose, but luckily, it's still a bronze medal. It's a lot of points, and so you can't be too picky when it's your first medal. I just wanted to get off the schneid, and now that's finally the weight is off my back. I'm in the medal history, and I was so thrilled that I finally pulled it off.
Well, Ben, are you disappointed that you're no longer the best player to have never gotten a medal?
I think I'm the best player of one medal. How's that? So that's
All
a
right.
new, a new moniker. How's that?
I
And so
like that.
by virtue of this third place finish with the overall standings, I'm in first place of six events and only one to go. I'm thrilled here. It's now there's less than 1 point separating me from second and third, but nonetheless, the lead's a lead. And that last event, unfortunately, is in a game that is not, again, one of my weakest ones, stud high low. This was only yesterday this event happened with 29 players. And so I was guaranteed in the standings if worst case scenario, sixth place overall, which, it sounds great, but I want another medal, obviously. That'd be great. I reasonably didn't expect to maintain first place unless I, earned some points and some substantial points because I would have needed to have gotten like 70 plus points in this last event just to improve my score at all. And so with 29 players, we're pretty much assuming the final table, which again, I've made four final tables out of six up to this point. So I figure my luck's probably running out pretty soon. And it's again my weakest event, so I didn't really expect to have too much. In your case, you were in the top 10, I think I want to say like sixth place. At
Seventh, I
this
think.
point, sixth, seventh place, not in contention for a medal, but still looking to earn more points. And with stud high low, again, I just kind of trudged along. I never really accumulated too many chips, and I think it showed in my finish. 14th place, still in the top half of the field. Not nearly as bad better than my worst performance in Showtime. So, but still not enough to earn me any points.
Yeah, well, I got 13th place. This is the one tournament that I managed to beat Ben in. We actually busted on very similar hands almost simultaneously. Ben had two red nines, and I also had two red nines, and we were both the short stacks. So it was kind of a bust. And then, yeah, I never really got a whole lot going. There was like a 30-minute stretch where I'd be dealt, jacks or queens or even aces. And by Fifth Street, I would just have that single pair and somebody would bet. And so I would fold, which means, probably a lot of the time, I was ahead or close to ahead and I just wouldn't follow through because I figured, oh, if I call on Fifth Street, going to be a bet coming on Sixth Street and on Seventh Street. So I'm just going to fold and get out early. But, maybe I could have taken one of those spots and tried to get two pair. There was one sort of desperation spot where it was with Il Copie, I remember. I had four to a low. It was like, it was 3, 4, 5, 6 low,
Mhm.
which is also a straight draw. And he bets, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, well, I'm at like 6,000 right now. If I call, this is a big portion of my pot.
You didn't fold, did you? There's no way you'd fold it.
Well, let me explain the spot.
Okay, all right.
So, I had 3, 4, 5, 6. He bets out. It was like 20% of my stack. And I'm thinking, oh, this is a lot of chips. All right, well, I got to just call here. So I called. I hit a two on the river. So that gave me a straight and a low. Sorry, not river,
Yeah.
straight. He bet, I raised, he called, and then I scooped the whole thing with a deuce through six straight and a 6-5 low. So I did call Ben, don't worry.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, that was like the only time I ever really did that. I think I need to learn to do a little bit more of that. If I have four low cards, even if it's not ideal, especially if they're four consecutive straight cards, I should pursue that last bet to try to make a hand. Um, I just did not do enough of that instead. I'm really kind of, disappointed with how I did that. I mean, I was at 10K for a little while. You were below 10K for the most part. You unfortunately just didn't really get a whole lot going. But then like I lost a couple of hands later on, and again, that's what got me into 13th place. I'm not super disappointed with how I did. Again, like, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, studs really my Achilles heel. I really need to learn to be a little bit more patient when I'm in a pot, be willing to put out some extra bets. It's okay if I lose a little bit of money. If in the grand scheme of things, if I can call on 6th and 7th Street and make my hand, then I'm going to make that money back. I need to be more willing to do that moving forward.
Well,
So,
also, yeah, the other two things is getting half of a pot that's three ways or four ways, and
mhm,
getting scooping heads up. So again, I scooped. I mean, I got half of two big three-way pots early on, and so I
mhm.
need more of that is always a good thing in stud. And luckily, the run out of bust outs wasn't super terrible in my favor given the overall standings. I mean, I still managed to just barely hang on to third place overall. The two players that were 1 point behind me had a really clear path to surpassing me because their fifth score was lower than my fifth best score. So they only had to improve on 60 points total, which they both did. So that's why they lead from me. But everybody else that was below me did not medal, that needed a medal to surpass me. And so by virtue of that finish, I managed to hang on to third place, which means two bronze medals, one overall, one in 8 game mix. So I'm so thrilled to get two in the same go. I figured they'd come in bunches, because you get one medal that puts you in a good spot for another one afterwards for the overall rankings. And so I think that if they had all seven events point totals count, I'd probably get first place or pretty close to it because I feel like I was the most consistent. I was only below halfway of the field once, and four final tables out of seven, not too shabby either.
Yeah, very, very good. I mean, you just found good spots for yourself. You managed to build your stack well, win a lot of small pots and also win a lot of big pots. I finished 10th overall, so I actually managed to, get some points off of stud. It was not my worst performance, but a bunch of players managed to leapfrog me, which is just no problem, of course. 10th is still perfectly respectable. I was trying to look for the rankings last year, and I don't know if they're still online or not. The medal results for each event is still online, but I don't think the total rankings are. But I think I finished in the top 10 for poker. I think all the years I played except 2021, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, I mean it's a top 10 finish still. I'm still content with it. And as you may have noticed, again, I'm not super thrilled with my skill level at this point, particularly in stud and hold'em. I definitely need to sharpen my game there. Every single bluff that I tried during the MSO worked. So I actually had one bluff in stud that went through. I had just a pair of twos, and I let out on 7th Street. And I think it was with BC. I can't remember for sure, but he
Hmm.
tagged for a while and then he folded. So that was the one bluff that I had during that stud tournament. I only bluffed like I think maybe 7 or 8 times during the whole thing, but I was able to pick spots there and again take down those pots. Nothing super big, but still something. Um, and yeah, I mean, I was relatively patient. But yeah, I mean, I really just need to stop being so cautious. I need to stop being so scared of other players. I definitely think people are taking advantage of that. Il Copia was to my left during the entire stud high-low tournament. Every single time I raised, he called. So I definitely think he was sensing weakness from me.
Mhm.
So I need to do a better job of that moving forward. So, 10th place feels respectable and feels appropriate for the amount of effort I put in. And I think I was the second highest score for somebody who didn't medal. So that's kind of nice. I'm
Yeah.
in, I'm in the medal tier for people who didn't medal.
Yeah, and again, I think the main thing was just our level of consistency. We were never out early. We were never out in the first. Again, your worst finish was 16th out of 28. So again, that's still top 60% of the field, even better than that, really, mathematically. And again, none of those flaming out first or second or third or fourth or fifth or 10th out. So I think that's also, relevant. And also with bluffing, there weren't any heads up events this year. And so you're going
Right.
to bluff more on heads up than you are going to be at a full table. I didn't, I mean, in Raz, I definitely bluffed a good amount. But in as if you discount Raz, I feel like Raz bluffing is a little bit different because of the nature of the game. I maybe my bluff percentage wasn't. I didn't bluff too many times either, but they worked more than they didn't. But I didn't bluff very much, so I can't say if that was really a part of my game or not. But I didn't have to bluff too much. But maybe I should have more on some events where I didn't make it as far. But you can do the best you can. And overall, again, two bronze medals. We'll definitely and I'll definitely be eager to get them shipped over here. We can open them later, and that'll be fun to have. And I'm finally off the Schnei. But there are a couple other poker headlines I do want to go over now that we discussed ourselves for long enough. We discussed how we really just don't really care too much about the PokerGo Tour Cup and all that stuff. And there was actually two events that back to back had the same two players heads up for the championship. Like it just speaks to just how homogenous these events are that you might not even, you just might be on the computer on or go, oh, it's these two, and the next day it's the same. You wouldn't even know it was different events. It'd just be the same old again.
Yeah, I just pulled up the PokerGo Tour website. Let's see. So there's 10,200 Maury's Mix. I don't know what that is. 15,200 Dealer's Choice. 25,310 Game Championship. 12,710 Game Satellite. It's just I don't know what they're doing. I
No,
mean,
so right now it's the mixed game series, so they're all. But the thing is that when it's the same, it's mixed game, mixed game, mixed game. It's what you want to have like ten tournaments and have a different game in each one, not just have six tournaments of the same game over and over again. They're doing about it just all wrong, if you ask me.
well, Ben, if you're excited about playing the same game over and over again, you can play 10,100 pot limit Omaha twice in 4 days at the end of March. Can also play 5,100 pot limit Omaha twice in 3 days if you want, Ben. I don't
Wow.
understand why they're organizing it like this. I mean, I understand the idea of, maybe you want to have a game later on in the series that people who weren't at the tour early on couldn't attend. But I mean, 2 days apart from each other, 3 days apart from each other, the exact same game for the exact same buy-in, just really doesn't make much sense. And not too much variations in the buy-in either. I mean, looking ahead, it goes to 15,100, then 25,000. It's like if you're gonna put up 10,000, you probably can put up 15,000, right? I mean, I don't see like 10,000 and a 25,000 and 100,000. Okay, that's something, but
It's just
just
not.
10,000 to 15,000, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, again, I never watch those events anyway, unless I'm within there, and he's not really in those anyway, so it's not relevant. On the more sad news, the poker world did lose Miami John Cernudo last month, unfortunately. And again, it just comes with the territory of the aging poker players in the world here. And we didn't really talk about him too much. He was in that '07, I think, day two table with Sky to win briefly, but. Again, always sad when a player who is has a long history of solid play passes on. And I don't know if you really knew much more about him than I did, but obviously, anytime someone's this well beloved in the community, it's always sad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like super strong memories of him, but yeah, he was very well liked. Seemed like a lot of fun to have. So, I'm sorry that he's passed away. On non-poker news in terms of passing away, I mean, Michelle Trachtenberg, who we were both fans of, also passed away. David Lynch passed away last month, and then Gene Hackman just passed away. So it's kind of like having this big bubble of just celebrities dying
And
all at once.
Lynn Murray Stewart too.
Yeah, that too. I mean, I'm very sorry to hear all that. It's really tragic.
Yeah. On the more bright side of news, I learned I misspoke because they have been changing the release date of the YouTube channel that will be showing Mike Madisow's documentary on YouTube for free. It was originally posted as July 1st, then it was moved up to June 1st, and now it's May 10th. So in about 2.5 months, people will be able to watch my 5 seconds of fame over and over again to their delight. And again, it's a movie I think that's worth watching, and maybe not worth paying for, but I think it's worth watching.
Yeah, that's how I would summarize it. I mean, it's interesting because it's nearly a good documentary, just sort of outright, but then it just doesn't quite get there through some amateurish mistakes. But if you're in the poker community and you've listened to this podcast, then I think you'd like it.
Plus, with YouTube, you can rewind and fast forward much more easily than our watching experience was, and you can change the speed too if you want to get to the good stuff faster or watch it in half speed, like how we do.
Exactly.
Another story recently, Phil Hellmuth making waves by talking about his opting out of the main event due to the physical toll it can take on the older folks in the poker world, and people critiquing him for making a big fuss of this, and I feel like you can. I feel like the criticism against Helmuth is a little bit unfair because, he's got AFib, he's getting older, he's allowed to spend his time and his energy on however he wants. I understand maybe if he, campaigns for rule changes or scheduling changes for the main event to add extra rest days, people can take offense to that. But I feel like, he's allowed to give his opinion though.
Yeah, he's absolutely allowed to give his opinion. I mean, I think this has been a narrative for a number of years now, is how grueling the main event is. That's kind of like playing the lottery because the levels are so long. Um, part of that helps make the main event distinct from other no limit hold'em tournaments, that it is so grueling, that it is endurance. The person who wins deserves to win because they've been at the table for so long. But the downside is that you're going to put out players like Phil Hellmuth, who add so much to the game. I didn't know that he had AFib, so that obviously adds an element of his concerns there. Obviously, whatever Phil Hellmuth does is fine by me. Um, how do I feel about, if they change it to like an hour and a half levels or an hour level? If that's what the majority of poker players want, that's fine. I don't think that would harm the viewing experience too much. Just, whatever people want. I mean, hopefully people aren't going after Phil Hellmuth for this. I mean, yeah, you're right. He's allowed to express his opinion.
I mean, but also there are so many other events that have, the same game or will have similar level sizes where, even if you don't play the main event, there are still other events that you can play that you'll get the same vibe, but it's a fewer day event. Like, a lot of these bracelet events, some of them are one day, the turbo hyper ones. Some of them are 2 days, some are 3 days, and the PPC is 4 or 5 days, and the main event's up to like, 10 days now. But I feel like there's enough poker out there where the main event is not the only option you have if you want to achieve poker, prowess and poker fame and stuff. And I feel like the main event does have that extra sort of, reputation to it. So I get that. But at the same time, there's 100 bracelet events every year now. And so, then play in something else and, it'll be fine that way too. Leave it the way it is. People can, it's their American right to play or not play it. And, there's other series, there's other casinos. There's so many options now that I feel like you don't need to make a big stink over about one event.
Yeah, I mean, you can always late reg if you're worried that, exhaustion is going to get to you, right? You can always pace yourself. You have pretty long breaks. I mean, you have an hour and a half for dinner, so you have plenty of time to get drinks and get food and keep going. It's a shame if Phil Hellmuth stopped playing over this because, his entrances and his, even though he hasn't had a deep run in a number of years, um, it'd be nice to see Phil Hellmuth. And I do think older people can compete, right? I mean, the narrative for years was nobody under 40 is going to win the main event, and then Hossein Ensan won it. And it seems like every final table has at least one person who's, 50 years or older or something, John Hesp, right? So, I mean, I definitely think that older people can still play the main event and win with these levels.
Yeah, and
Again,
also
yeah.
the Dan Weinman year, 2023, the final table had nobody in their 20s in it. So I feel
Yes.
like, we have data now to support that that's not necessarily, it's not only a young person's game currently. And even last year, it wasn't the youngest table in the world. I mean, you had guys like Jason Segel and Tamayo that were a little bit on the older side that maybe in years past would have been a bit younger of a field. So I feel like, it's not, obviously, people that could be the same age and have very different levels of energy or stamina. But and it would be a shame if Helmuth does sit out the main event because I just he was one of the highlights of last year on day one, day two. He was, his antics on day one were part of our collection of top 10 moments of the main event so far. And so it'd be a shame if he stops playing it, but also his legacy is established, and so if he can put his energy into 3 or 4 other events rather than the main event, then I think that puts a bit better money to win a bracelet than to play the main event.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing I have on my little bullet point of talking points here is actually in the PGT, there was the 8 game mix final table a couple days ago, won by Adam Friedman. So, and again, the same event that I got my medal in, and I was watching him play, and it was kind of amusing seeing how few big bets were in play by the end, how the stakes kept going up, and I felt like he it's kind of running parallel to my experience running in the bracelet in the medal events, and so capitalizing on your opponents if they put a bet in that's very foolish, raising them, getting called, winning all those chips. I felt some synergy there of him watching that event.
Yeah, Adam Friedman is just incredible in mixed games, isn't he? I mean, he's won so many bracelets in mixed games. He really should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he might be the greatest mixed game tournament player of all time. The grinder's great, don't get me wrong, but I mean, Adam Friedman's just a beast in that.
Yeah, and with now a PGT Tour event under his list of accomplishments. I look forward to seeing him play every year in that event. Even that time that he did beat Helmuth in the event heads up, I was happy with the outcome of that either way. So, no hard feelings there. Obviously, as a big Helmuth fan for me, but that is about the only positivity I could really glean from the PGT was watching Friedman crush things. As he began, I think, with like the short stack with like seven left, and that final table actually there wasn't a single bust out for like three-quarters of the total live feed. So that's pretty funny to watch as they got shallower and shallower. But that's really kind of, again, kind of like not mocking, but kind of like NARM enjoyment of that event rather than the event itself at face value.
Yeah.
But I think, guys, that's almost about an hour right there of talking right there. That's about our experience with our latest endeavors in medal glory in the MSO. I'm really happy to be finally off the Schneid. I'm still going to play as well as I have in the near future, but I'm going to be less stressed about getting that very first medal and can kind of, I mean, I was always level headed. I don't think I made any tilt, plays or anything, but just getting into the string of things and having a chance to finally catch up on Sam on his massive medal total.
Yeah, I mean, I have eight in total, and hopefully I'll be able to order that eighth medal and get it in. I missed the deadline last year, but I did contact them this year, and they said that as soon as medals are open, I should be able to order mine. So I'll have the complete collection. And yeah, I mean, again, I have mixed vibes about how I played this year. I didn't play a whole lot of poker over the last calendar year. I mean, I think beside the MSO last year, I mean, I may have played like 10 hours of poker in total last year. I was very busy. This year's also going to be busy, but I'll definitely try to play some stud tournaments and get my game better there. Play some no limit hold'em tournaments to get my game, and also if there ever is Showtime tournaments, unfortunately, PokerStars has really cut back on having 8 game and horse and Showtime hold'em and even stud in tournaments. So hopefully, if I can find those opportunities, I'll sharpen those games. And I guess we should shout out the people who did get first and second. Parker Pulver, who got first place and is the top American in the field, and then Cornell Mihai, who got second. And then Francisco Ventola got fourth, and Dario Di Taffioli got fifth. And Dario's like a long time MSOer. And again, just to go over the MSO, poker is just one variant that's in the MSO. There's also backgammon and Settlers of Catan and a bunch of different chess stuff, a bunch of different board games. I mean, there was dozens in this Grand Prix alone, and this is just the Grand Prix. There's the live event, which usually takes place in London. I think it takes place in Spain this year, which has a couple of poker games, but is also just like chess. I think there's like underwater chess where you like dive into a pool and you do chess.
From the website.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. I think Bridge is there too, other stuff. I definitely would like to play the live MSO one year, especially if they have creative thinking, which please bring back creative thinking. I would love to play that again. Um, but yeah, if there are any MSOers who want to talk about their experiences, you can do so in the comments section. We're happy to have you on the show. Or you can just write us a quick comment and tell us what you think. Congratulate Ben for his deserved third place finish. He has joined the third place club. I welcome you into the third place club. You can almost say we're the Bronze Brothers. We have eight bronze medals between no, nine bronze medals between the two of us. So we really are the Bronze Brothers.
I'll make that the episode title, I think. That'd
I
be
like
good.
that.
And we did have one comment on episode 68, our Mike Postle show, by Expose 1657 saying, did we try to hit up our guys that we discussed? I often do reach out to guys like Raymer, or if we're gonna, interview candidates or some of the guys that we discussed. But in this case, I chose not to. If Postle, I felt like it wouldn't be productive to reach out to him. And if Ingram, I just didn't think to at that point. I don't think, but I will definitely reconsider reaching out more to our people that are relevant to who we discuss going forward for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk to Mike Postler or Joey Ingram if they want. Again, like anybody who's interested in coming on the podcast, you're welcome to do so. And thank you for making that, suggestion. If you have any suggestions for, it doesn't have to be media, like people to reach out to or topics, headline news to discuss. If there's any like play money poker stars tournaments out there that you want us to play, sure, we'll play those. If you're at all interested, you can always leave a comment. We always appreciate it.
Yeah, again, we're always looking for more comments, suggestions, ideas, and guests. And again, we are inching ever so closer to the illustrious episode number 100, where we're still figuring out what will be in that episode. But we're excited because, 50 was our Rimmer show. So hopefully we can have someone equally as awesome for episode number 100. We still have, a few more poker media things to go over coming up, some documentaries, some movies here. So we have still some more things to go over in the future. So we're looking forward to it as the rest of the year continues.
Yeah, I guess we should. One last thing here is it seems like the WSOP has announced its series schedule for the summer, so I guess we
Oh,
could talk a
yes,
little bit
that's
about
right.
that.
They did do that. And so we could just go over our just sort of initial and thoughts on the schedule. I mean, for the most part, you're going to have, I would say, 95% of these events are going to be the same year to year. And maybe they just tweak a few things within the rules or the structure. And then maybe they experiment with maybe a new event here and there. It does seem like there is a new tournament variant called the Battle of the Ages,
Yeah,
where
I just saw that.
players over 50 play one flight and players under 50 play the other, and they combined. I mean, it sounds like a cool idea, but at the same time, I feel like it's just kind of gimmicky. I mean, I feel like your table could be one age group anyway, so you wouldn't on day one, it wouldn't even matter anyway. But I guess it would be kind of fun if heads up was one oldie versus one youngster. It'd be kind of fun, I guess, if that's how it turned out.
Yeah, that is kind of funny. It's a little strange, but I mean, you got to add little gimmicks, right? Is there any other gimmicky
There's
ones?
now, so they're going to have a Torse event, Torse, where triple draw low ball will replace limit hold'em, which I
Interesting.
guess, I mean, I don't know. I kind of like limit hold'em. I feel like it's pretty underrepresented. I mean, I think there's a limit hold'em event usually every year, but I think having it in horse is totally fine. I don't recall people saying they hate the limit version, the limit hold'em in horse in the past. I'm a little surprised they changed it, unless they have horse and Torse, but that's just my thought on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other sort of funky events. There's, your standard mixture of different things, which is always good. I mean, it's obviously better than the PokerGo Tour where you're playing, 1,500 Hold'em, for 3 days in a row, three different tournaments. Yeah, so it looks like the main event gets started with day 1A on July 2nd, and then day 1B July 3rd, and then day 1C on July 4th, and so on. So we are inching toward the main event, you could say, only 4 months away. So
Yes.
obviously we'll keep our eyes open for that. And just throwing this out there, Ben, just throwing this out here. The tag team event looks like it's in June, right? Let me just double check that. Yeah, June 24th, you and Adam, just saying.
I don't know. I kind of feel like June would be a busy month for Adam. I wonder why.
Well, you never know,
I
you
don't
could
know.
just sneak that in there. Or maybe we'll do it. We're the Bronze Brothers now. We got to go do it.
Well, I mean, if we can't even win a medal, a first place in a medal event in the MSO, what chance do we have in a World Series poker event for money? But and in any case, we can definitely pour over the full schedule going forward as we get there. Uh,
Yeah.
nothing in on paper as far as our summer schedule, but we'll take it one month at a time.
Yeah, well, it is late reg until there's 8 levels for the tag team event. So we'll have that little bit of extra time to talk that over.
Fair enough, fair enough. But guys, for now, I think we've yapped on enough here. We'll see you next time. Enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, enjoy your poker on TV.
And I now declare the Mind Sport Olympiad podcast over.
All right, bye, guys.